Hey everybody, Jennifer Lee Chan here from NBC Sports Bay Area. It is Wednesday. This has been kind of a crazy week. I am home in Los Angeles and we just recorded another 49ers Talk podcast, which will have the interviews with Mac Jones and Tanner Mordecai. So I'll post those up here in a little bit. I'm also going to put the Luke Farrell and George Kittle interviews up here because now they've been on NBC Sports for a little while. Just, kind of thinking back to like this time off and why it's so important for young guys to get reps. And, I spoke to Tanner Mordecai and Mac Jones, and I think, Kyle Shanahan may have said it best. Guys that do not participate in minicamp and OTAs do have trouble, with their learning curve. It's a little bit slower than guys who have been there for every single rep in training camp. And I'm talking about guys like Dominic Pooney last year, every rep during training camp. And then he was there, before that, every rep during mini camp and OTAs. He was there. He took the installation tapes home from Chris Furster, and he studied those during the 40 days away. He came in training camp ready to go. Uh, that panned out to be a really good season for Dominic Pooney. And I don't think anyone expected him to become a week one starter and then play the entire season, every single rep of the offense, and um, was a pleasant surprise, lovely gentleman to talk to. And I think that, this 49ers draft class could have another guy that has the same kind of impact, is not as, maybe not as high of a draft pick as everybody thinks, will be a huge contributor. I do think Michael Williams will contribute. I do think he'll be a rotational player, but I'm really thinking a guy who could have the same path as Dominic Pooney, super successful, maybe a little bit later round pick, is CJ West. CJ West was there for every single mini camp practice, every single OTA practice. And I think if he stays healthy during this 40 days off, works really hard, has lots of contact with Chris Furster, not Chris Furster, Chris Kasarik, the Chris's, the lineman coaches, Chris Kasarik, I think that CJ West could be a guy who ends up contributing and being a rotational player on the interior of the defensive line. Now, defensive line has gone through a lot of changes. I do think that it's Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff, Yetur Gross-Matos on the opposite side. Jordan Elliott has been playing really well. And it could be CJ West getting some time in there in the middle. Kevin Givens was out there during minicamp. Sam Akuano will get some reps, but they're going to keep 9 defensive linemen after the cuts to 53, the initial cuts. I think CJ West is a guy who could really blow up and end up being, a DJ Jones type of guy. Now, that's the comp. But DJ Jones, again, didn't do a whole lot his rookie year, but did really pan out. Nice career, big contracts. This is what I could see for CJ West. He's enthusiastic, he's gregarious, he's kind of got a similar personality, and not saying that they're the same, but that energy, that kind of jokester kind of personality, it's very similar to George Kittle. And I think that when you have a guy who's just so eager to learn, he's like asking Nick Bosa questions, he's asking Jordan Elliott questions. Guys that are later round draft picks a lot of times have a little bit more motivation to say, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to give myself a leg up to get to the level where I can contribute on an NFL football team. So I do think Michael Williams does make an impact. I think he's on the field, but I think he's, not going to be an every down starter like Nick Bosa, who's out there most snaps. I think Bryce Huff, Yetur Gross-Matos are going to kind of be there as the guys who really are the pillars of the defensive line. Now, Yetur Gross-Matos can also slide on the inside. He can play next to Jordan Elliott. So they have options there on the defensive line. It is not as good in name as it was last year, but it has a lot of potential. There is potential on this defensive line. And if they can play well and they can play together and they can stay healthy during training camp, it could be a good sign for the defensive line. Now, other guys who could contribute, again, I've said this multiple times on here. I am concerned about Alfred Collins and his health. Second round pick. He's a guy that, high round pick. Is he going to be able to get on the field? He missed all of minicamp, all of OTAs, did not see him on the field. I don't know whether he was with the training staff. I don't know whether he was in the classroom for defensive lineman with Chris Kasarik. I mean, I would assume he was for a mandatory minicamp, but just did not see him at all. So I am concerned. Other guys that could contribute. Nick Martin is going to compete with D Winters for that spot next to Fred Warner. So Nick Martin has a chance to get a lot of reps. I would think during training camp, if he can stay healthy and he can stay on the field and compete and learn and, be a sponge around Fred Warner, he has a chance to really make an impact, give D Winters a run for his money. When we asked John Lynch, hey, is D Winters your guy who's going to play in that Dre Greenlaw position? And, John Lynch was not overconfident. He said, we love D Winters. He's a great guy. He's going to compete. He's going to have a chance, which means that's why they went after Nick Martin. And he's going to compete for that starting role next to Fred Warner as well. Another guy. And these are, they took a lot of defensive guys at the beginning of this draft. Upton Stout is another guy who probably will get a lot of reps during training camp. And if he can compete, he could be that nickel position, or he could play on the outside. He could play on the outside. Deommodore Lenoir could play nickel. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it during training camp. I think they wanted Upton Stout to get those nickel reps during mini camp and OTAs, and Deommodore Lenoir played on the outside the most time. They know what they have in Deommodore Lenoir. He could play inside. He could play outside. They don't know what they're going to do with him yet. So, I mean, all bets are off for where Deommodore Lenoir plays. At safety, again, guys who are new, Jason Pinnock, Richie Grant is going to play alongside of Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa when he gets healthy. I think he's your guaranteed starter once he's healthy. I don't know, even though he's been running really well, I don't know that he's going to be ready. I don't think he'll be ready for training camp. They're going to take it easy with him. I did see the videos of him running. He looks really good, but I think the 49ers are going to be very careful with him. They need him to be healthy for the long haul, and that means week 8 and beyond. That's when they're going to need him for the playoff runs. They don't want to put him back early and risk him having an injury and then missing games towards the end of the season. So defensively, I think the 49ers have some draft picks that are going to be on the field. Could it be as good as last year? Not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. There are some guys who, on the offensive side, who are going to get some time too. I think Jordan Watkins is a guy who was the standout young wide receiver at camp. I think he's the guy who had the best timing with Brock Purdy. Guys who need reps during training camp, Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings and Jacob Cowing got a lot of reps during OTAs. Juwan Jennings was out during minicamp. So there were some other guys that got some work. Demarcus Robinson, that suspension is going to happen at some point. So Jordan Watkins is going to have an opportunity to be able to get some reps. So if he can stay motivated and keep in the playbook, rookies often don't get a lot of play when they're in Kyle Shanahan's offense. But this is a guy who looked really good during minicamp. Now, Kyle Shanahan was very subdued when asked about him, but if he can come back and be ready and get a ton of reps during training camp, just like he did during minicamp and OTAs, he could earn a spot for some reps on offense when the 49ers get into it. Ricky Pearsall missed minicamp because of his hamstring. He's got to get those reps during training camp. I think Jacob Cowing is going to get his shot, but Juwan Jennings, obviously, wide receiver 1 to start the season, and expect him to be back at it. Obviously, he needs to stay healthy. Just a little hamstring tweak that kept him out of minicamp, but he should be back and ready to go for training camp. So I'll kind of take a look at the offensive line. On the next one, we'll take a look at a couple other positions, but that's what I'm going to talk about for today. Hope you all are well. It is Wednesday. If I don't do a video tomorrow, have a happy 4th. I think I will. It's Thursday. I have a little time tomorrow. So hope you all are well, and we'll talk to you soon. Let me know if you'd like me to discuss anything else, but that's what I'm thinking about this rookie class. Those top 5 defensive players, who's got the best chance of being a standout? Good night.